What are the resistances to worship? Think about it. For somebody that's new, that had never been to worship before, walked in here on Sunday morning, and it's a daunting task. We sing, we pray, we stand, we sit. Some churches kneel, and it's not always obvious why we're doing that. It might feel awkward for a person who has no clue as to why we engage in what we do. But when you really think about it, we feel clumsy and self-conscious anytime we do something for the first time. I remember trying to learn how to play tennis, and very early on, I felt clumsy and self-conscious. Golf is the same way, and even when I play today, I feel clumsy and self-conscious. When we go to the community center and we take up a membership and we decide to do fitness and all the great equipment that we have there, it feels awkward. Anytime, playing bass guitar in public, for the first time, and even still today, feels awkward. All of those things we don't resist doing those things. Why would we resist coming to worship? Because it might feel awkward. Sometimes attending worship requires acting against the resistance, the criticism, or the ridicule of a spouse or family. That is a resistance that people have to deal with. Following Christ isn't always easy. Following Christ isn't always convenient. Making decisions without the support of people we love isn't always easy. Worship requires resolve. Sometimes attending worship feels difficult because we're not sure we believe everything that following Jesus involves. We may say the Apostles' Creed, and we may skip some of those words because we may not believe them. We may not believe all the things that you see and hear in worship. But the only way we can come to believe it is by practicing it and trusting that followers of Jesus have learned from being a part of it and have overcome the resistance of not being sure, of having some doubts. And we all have internal resistances. We all backslide at various times in our life. Our life of faith fluctuates between times of curiosity and tedium, exhilaration and ordinariness, of doubt and rediscovery. Worship, in order to overcome these resistances, requires persistence to work through these fluctuating times. So those are the resistances. It feels awkward. Sometimes we get criticized and ridiculed by spouses and friends. We're not sure we really believe all that following Jesus seems to involve, and we have some internal resistances as well. Okay, so the practice of worship, the resistances to worship. So let's now talk about passionate worship. What does it mean to be involved in passionate worship? What's that practice? We get our first clue from the psalmists. There's a lot of clues about passionate worship in the Psalms. But let me focus in on Psalm 84:2, where the psalmist says, "My soul longs, indeed it faints, for the courts of the Lord." When's the last time that's been true of you? We're not engaging in passionate worship if, in fact, these kinds of things are not true for us. Passion. How would you define passion? Full of life, involving our whole selves. When a person, where do you see passion? Okay. Where do you see passion in the community of Geneseo the most? Friday night football. Yeah. What do you see? You see people, jumping and shouting and all sorts of energy being involved. Folks long to be there on Friday night. Let's see, my soul longs, indeed it faints, for the football stadium in Geneseo on Friday nights. That's what we're talking about. Inflamed with love is what passion means. I've got 4 ways for those who practice passionate worship that we need to think about. Those who practice passionate worship, first of all, cultivate a vibrant relationship with God in public worship. For folks who are passionately involved in worship, worship is a lifelong priority. They're here every Sunday as long as they're not in the hospital or in another state. Cultivate a vibrant relationship with God in public worship. Radical hospitality, on the one hand, radical hospitality receives God's love in welcoming openness. Passionate worship returns love to God frequently with energy, intelligence, and imagination. In other words, what we call you to today is returning your love to God in worship. Begin to do it on a more regular basis. That's passionate worship. Those who practice passionate worship, number 2, embrace the mystery of worship. If I were to try to describe worship and in all its fullness what it means to me and what it might mean to you, I think my description would fall short. Can you tell me everything that happens when we pray, or when we sing, or when we give an offering, or when we receive a piece of bread and taste grape juice? Embrace the mystery of worship, because it can't all be explained. I think much of the contemporary church movement has been away from the mystery of the faith, removing much of the sights and sounds and motions that have historically been a part of worship. This follows our cultural trend to see, hear, taste, touch, and smell only the surface of life. And it's an unwillingness to delve into the depths of the spiritual where God is found. I do have to say that in today's world there has been a return to the search for the spiritual. But much of it has been not toward the traditional forms of the spiritual, but New Age, taking a little bit from this religion, a little bit from this religion, and trying to mash it together into a form of beliefs. But worship blesses us in unknown ways. And one of the things we need to do when we're here is embrace the mystery below the surface of our senses.